made wild and fake stories about the royal family which scared her and made her paranoid. Royal dinners are supposed to show unity, class, and tradition. But this time, the spotlight turned into a disaster. Well, I'm not sure what I can bring. It's what all these very brave ladies tell me. When Queen Camilla showed up wearing one of Catherine's most special dresses, it hit like lightning through the palace walls. For Prince William, it wasn't just bad manners. It was a hurtful insult to his wife and her place in the royal family. People who saw it say his anger was impossible to hide. So why would Camilla make such a bold choice? And what trouble could it cause? A dinner meant for unity. The big dinner at Buckingham Palace looked perfect. An amazing display of royal tradition and power. Golden lights, shiny marble floors, sparkling silver forks and knives, crystal glasses, and sweet-smelling rosa decorations turned the huge hall into a royal masterpiece. Reminding the world of Britain's lasting greatness and timeless royal power, the guests also understood the rules they were supposed to follow. Foreign leaders, with their important titles and carefully planned friendships, walked gracefully in gowns and suits made from the finest silk. Diamonds sparkled on ears and wrists, crowns glowed under perfectly styled hair, and talk buzzed at a low, respectful level. Nothing was supposed to mess up the delicate balance of class and respect. In one corner, the band played softly, creating a soundtrack that seemed to float under the chandeliers like a hidden magic spell, connecting every move and every look into a bigger show. Because that was what the dinner really was, a show. It wasn't just dinner. It was theater at the highest level. Every napkin fold, every flower arrangement, every musical note had been practiced, perfected, and polished until it carried the weight of the crown's power. To someone who didn't know better, this was harmony in action. A kingdom still strong and peaceful, a royal family untouched by scandal or change. And yet, under the glittering surface, cracks were forming. No one could see them in the shine of the marble, but they were carved deep into the relationships of those who sat at the main table. For weeks, the family had been caught in a storm of public guessing. Newspapers and magazines had fed on whispers of fighting, rumors of bitter arguments behind closed doors, accusations of betrayal that turned one family member against another, and craziest stories too juicy for the press to ignore. Every headline had chipped away at the image of unity that the palace fought so hard to show. Tonight's dinner was supposed to be the big answer to it all, a living statement that the royal family was steady, unbothered. The setup was perfect. The guest list carefully chosen. Camera's position to capture the majesty without showing the worry. All the world needed to see was sparkling glass, polite laughter, and the comforting illusion that nothing within these ancient walls ever failed. But illusions are fragile things. They shine beautifully, but they can break with the smallest crack. And on this night, that cracked in a form no one could have predicted, not in a speech gone wrong, not in a badly timed gesture, but in fabric, a gown. It was meant to be just another dress in a room full of designer clothes. But clothes in royal life are never just, they are symbols, statements, and sometimes weapons. This gown carried with it echoes of another woman, another story, another claim. And as the cameras flashed and the guests turned their heads, what should have been the royal family's strongest moment became the spark that threatened to destroy it all. The chandeliers still sparkled. Theban still played. The roses still filled the air with sweetness. But under the show, something had changed. In that moment, the royal family's carefully staged show of strength began to look less like theater and more like a mask about to fall off. What happened at dinner? Was it something so serious? Could it cause serious trouble? Let's find out. The momentum froze. The grand hall fell silent as King Charles entered, his calm face marked by years of duty. Behind him, Queen Camilla walked with royal grace, her silver gown shimmering under the chandeliers. Admiration spread through the crowd. She looked every bit a commanding, glowing queen. But admiration is a fragile thing. It lasted only seconds before it began to die. First, a few eyes got wide. Then came the sharp gasp, the subtle but clear shift in the air. A whisper spread from one corner to another, like fire racing from candle to candle. Fans were lifted to faces, hands covered mouths, and whispers slipped between rows of shocked guests. What they saw was Middleton, a gown. It was a memory come alive, a symbol too sacred to be worn by. That gown did not belong to Queen Camilla. Everyone in the room knew it. It was Catherine's. Years earlier, the Princess of Wales had stepped into its spotlight in that very dress. She had worn it at a state dinner that marked her as the royal family's shining future. The moment had been captured forever in photographs, splashed across newspapers and magazines. Framed in the memory of millions, Catherine in that gown had become an image of grace, elegance, and hope, a living symbol of the royal family's promise to renew itself for the next generation. To see anyone else in it, especially Camilla, was nothing short of shocking. The band almost unconsciously stumbled, notes wavered in the air, as though the violins themselves had lost their breath. Across the long tables, leaders exchanged uneasy looks, their smiles getting stiff, conversations drying up mid. Even the servants trained to stay unseen and unshaken could not hide their reactions. Their eyes darted sideways, showing their disbelief. The air grew thick with tension. Admiration had turned into outrage, though no voice had dared speak it out loud. What had begun as a grand entrance was now a scandal unfolding in real time. And then the moment reached its peak. Catherine entered. She appeared radiant, poised and graceful as always. Her smile carefully measured, her steps flowing with practiced ease. Yet those who looked closely, those close enough to catch the subtle flicker in her eyes, saw what lay beneath the polished surface. Behind the calm smile was a storm brewing. It was not loud or dramatic, but quiet and sharp, the kind of storm that could upset Eventhy's strongest hearts. Her eyes told the truth that her lips refused to say. Betrayal. The room seemed to hold its breath. All at once, admiration, disbelief, and unspoken judgment clashed in the silence. Every gaze moved between Thetwu women, the queen who wore the gown and the princess to whom it. The scene had shifted from pageantry to drama, from celebration to confrontation without words. What should have been a night of unity and spectacle had instead become a spectacle of its own, one that would echo far beyond the golden walls of Thedner Hall. Who was the first to notice the problem? How did he react? Does the reaction matter? Let's dig into the details of the reaction that followed Camilla's elegant appearance. William's silent explosion. Prince William noticed it before anyone else. The moment Camilla entered the grand hall, his eyes narrowed, his gaze stuck to the gown she wore. And in an instant, recognition hit him like lightning, splitting the night sky. It wasn't just a dress, it was the dress. He knew every fold, every shimmer of silk, every carefully woven stitch of embroidery. The sight dragged him back into memorias. If someone had ripped open a door to the past, that gown belonged to his wife, his Catherine's gown. A sharp wave of disbelief crashed into him, followed by something darker. His jaw tightened, his chest felt like it was wrapped in iron, and his fists clenched so hard under the tablecloth that his knuckles turned bone-white. Around him, soft whispers rose like smoke in the air, but William barely heard them. To him, this wasn't a mistake or a coincidence. It was an act, a deliberate, carefully planned move. His thoughts focused to a single point. How dare she? The words slipped from his lips in a whisper so low, only those closest could catch it. Yet his tone was cold, edged with steel. He wasn't speaking as a son-in-law or as a guest at a royal dinner. He was speaking as a man whose honor and housewife's dignity had just been stepped on. Those nearby began to notice the change. In him, his posture was no longer relaxed, but rigid, tense, like Abbo. His face stayed calm, but his eyes burned with a storm that refused to be hidden. A woman, seated 2 places away, leaned toward her companion and muttered, "He looks like he's about to explode." Another, her voice shaking with a mixture of fear and fascination, added, "Look at his hands. They're shaking." Catherine noticed, too. She knew her husband better than anyone, and she recognized the storm raging beneath his controlled surface. Leaning closer, she touched his arm gently under the table. Her fingers, light and steady, tried to anchor him before he did something he might regret. Her voice was soft, almost a breath, but filled with calm authority. "Don't make a scene," she whispered. "Not here. Not now." William turned slightly toward her, his jaw still set, but her touch kept him grounded. For a brief moment, the fury threatening to spill out of him found a dam in her presence. She was always his balance, the calm to his storm, the hand that reminded him of duty when emotion pushed him to the edge. But inside, the fire only burned hotter. His rage wasn't only about the insult to Catherine. No Thisket. Deeper, far deeper. That gown was more than fabric, more than a fashion choice. It was a memory, a symbol, a connection to his mother. Camilla stepping into the room wearing it was more than just poor taste. It felt like a direct wound to his family, an echo of the pain he thought he had buried long ago. Every shimmer of the gown wasn't just a reminder of it was a shadow of his mother, a cruel reminder of the woman he lost and the complicated history that still haunted him. To William, it was not just disrespect, it was betrayal. And beneath the glittering chandeliers of the royal dinner, his fury burned, silent but fierce enough to shake the air around him. Why was William's reaction so intense? Could it have triggered a traumatic feeling from his past? Let's dig into the details of feelings that took over him at that moment. Ghosts off Diana. The moment William's eyes landed on Camilla, draped in Catherine's gown, it was as though the air had been sucked out of the grand dinner hall. It wasn't just a fashion choice. It was Acnaf twisting in wounds he had spent years forcing shut. The fabric, the cut, the unmistakable elegance of the gown belonged to Catherine. It was hers, a symbol of her grace and the quiet dignity with which she carried the crown. And now, seeing it worn by a thief-woman who had long been tied to his mother's deepest suffering, ripped open the scars of his past. Instantly, the ghosts of memory surged back with merciless force. He was no longer in the sparkling hall, but a boy again, watching his mother, Diana, the Beleved people's princess, crumble under the weight of betrayal. He remembered her tears, the privationas. No cameras caught, the kind that shook a child's world and made him promise Senever to let history repeat itself. He remembered the headlines, the humiliation that was paraded before the entire world, and the shadow that always lingered behind it all. Camilla, the pain of her absence pressed against his chest, as sharp now as it had been on the night he lost her. Decades might have passed, but the emptiness she left behind never really dulled. Every milestone, every achievement, every joy he shared with Catherine was colored by the ache of wishing Diana had been there to see it. And now, here in this room of glittering chandeliers and polite smiles, the woman whose presence had symbolized so much of Diana's pandered to wear Catherine's gown. It was more than bad taste. It was an insult to William. It felt like history clawing its way back from the grave, eager to torture him once again. First, his mother, now his wife. Another woman he loved being pulled into a cruel game, off comparison and intrusion. Another reminder that the past was not buried, only waiting for the right moment to strike. William's chest rose and fell heavily as though each breath was a battle. His fists tightened at his side. Around him, the music swelled. Violins, laughter, the clinking of crystal glasses, but none of it could drown out the storm roaring inside his head. Heckled almost see his mother's face, her smile that lit up the world, her paint that had scarred his childhood, and the silent plea she had once left him with, don't let them win. Leaning slightly toward Catherine, his voice low buthek with fury, he muttered words meant only for her. This is deliberate. She knows exactly what she's doing. Each syllable burned with the weight of old grief and new rage. In that moment, the dinner hall no longer felt like a celebration. To William, it was a battlefield, and Camilla's gown was no more fabric. It was a weapon. The ghosts of the past had returned, dressed in silk and jewels, daring him to confront the pain he had tried so hard to bury, and deep inside, William knew the storm within him was only just beginning. Didi eventually challenged Camilla for appearing in his wife's outfit. Or did he just swallow the rage, acting like it was nothing? Let's dive into the details of William's reaction. The hallway confrontation. Later that night, when the palace had finally quieted, William found himself unable to sit still. Every nerve in his booty seemed alive, burning with restlessness. He pushed back his chair and muttered an excuse, though no one asked where he was going. The truth was, he didn't know himself. All he knew was that he needed to get away. Away from the dinner, away from the whispers, away from the sight that had been eating at him since the evening began. His polished shoes struck against Buckingham's marble hallways, each echo bouncing off the high ceilings, like a reminder of the storm inside him. He needed air. He needed space. He needed escape. But escape, as it seemed, wasn't going to be easy. Camilla appeared behind him, her steps softer but steady, as though she had been waiting. Whether it was coincidence or planned, William couldn't tell. What he knew was that she had followed him, and soon enough they were standing in one of the palace's dim hallways. The walls here were lined with portraits, kings, queens, long-dead royals with watchful eyes, their golden frames gleaming faintly under the muted light. It was as if the very ancestors of the crown were spectators to the confrontation about to unfold. William turned sharply, his face set with fury. His voice, though controlled, was sharp enough to cut through the silence. "Yauknu?" That was Catherine's dress. Camilla met his eyes, her own expression calm, almost detached, as if she had grown used to storms like this. "It's just a gown, William. Don't be so dramatic." The words only fanned the fire. His composure failed, anger slipping past the cracks in his royal restraint. "Nothing in this family is just anything," he snapped. "That gown wasn't fabric. It washers, it carried her memory, her moment, her dignity. And you wore it anyway in front of everyone." Her lips pressed into Stephanie's trace of a smile, though her eyes narrowed with irritation. Her voice stayed level, but her words carried poison. "You give too much power to ghosts. Perhaps it's time you stop living in Diana's shadow. She's gone, William. You can't let the dead rule the living." The sentence hit him like a thunderclap. For a heartbeat he couldn't breathe, his chest tightened, fury and grief crashing together, each feeding the other until felt nearly undone. For all his training, all his duty, all his royal composure, nothing could dull the rawness of those words. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, heavy, with a truth he could no longer hold back. "Ya will never understand. You were the cause of her pain. And tonight, you didn't just insult her memory. You disrespected my wife in front of For the briefest moment, Camilla's carefully held mask slipped. Something flickered. Hurt, guilt, maybe fear. But just as quickly, she pulled the veil Afcom back over her face. William, however, didn't wait to see it settle. He turned on his heel and walked away, his shadow stretching long beneath the watchful portraits. Camilla stayed, standing alone beneath the silent gaze of centuries of monarchs, their painted eyes bearing witness to the clash between past wounds and present power. How was William's relationship with Camilla before that night? Was it a strained one or a friendly one? Let's digento the details of how the two have been before the royal dinner. William's complicated relationship with Camilla, the relationship between Prince William, the Prince of Wales, and Queen Camilla Asoni, of the most fascinating and complicated dynamics within the royal family today. This year has placed them in closer contact than ever before, largely due to the health struggles of King Charles III and Catherine, Princess of Wales, who are both battling cancer, with so much responsibility suddenly falling on William's shoulders. He has had to rely more on Camilla in certain areas of royal life. Professionally, they are forced to present a united front, supporting the king and ensuring the royal family continues to function. Personally, however, their bond remains fragile, with decades of history weighing heavily on every interaction. For William, Camilla represents a deeply painful chapter of his past. Her role in the long and messy love triangle between King Charles, Princess Diana, and herself left scars that never truly healed. While the affair dominated deadlines at the time, what is often overlooked is how much it shaped the childhood of William and his brother Harry. They grew up watching their beloved mother suffer public humiliation and emotional pain while their father's relationship with Camilla unfolded in the shadows. For two young boys devoted to Diana, it was an early and unforgettable lesson in heartbreak. A palace insider recently confirmed that this history still lingers. There's a lot to overcome. The source explained that William and Harry have always struggled to trust Camilla. Their loyalty to Diana ran so deep that they could never bring themselves to fully accept her into their lives. According to the insider, they never felt comfortable opening up to her in any meaningful way, and the relationship stayed distant, almost business-like. The tension is not only rooted in the past, however, even as Camilla transitioned from Charles's controversial companion to his wife, and ultimately to queen consort, feed out from Diana's sons, never truly softened. For William and Harry, Camilla was never just a stepmother. She was also a reminder of everything their mother endured. That emotional wall has been difficult, if not impossible, to tear down. Adding fuel to the fire is Camilla's long-standing relationship with British press, particularly the Royal Rota, the core group of journalists who cover the royal family. For years, both William and Harry have had a love-hate relationship with the media, often blaming it for the relentless scrutiny and tragic outcome of their mother's life. Discovering that Camilla had allegedly built her own ties with reporters to improve her public image only deepened the distrust. Prince Harry spoke openly about this issue in his memoir, Spare, describing how Camilla allegedly leaked stories to the press to fix her reputation at the expense of others. According to the Royal Insider, William quietly shared similar concerns, the insider revealed. William and Harry's distrust grew when they found out Camilla was leaking stories to the press to make herself look better. For two men who have always been fiercely protective of their privacy, this was a serious betrayal. What makes the situation even more delicate is that William and Camilla cannot completely avoid one another. With Charles undergoing treatment and Catherine focusing on her health, the spotlight often falls on William and Camilla to carry out royal duties. On the surface, they smile, attend events, and perform the rituals expected of them. But beneath the polished exterior, there is a quiet tension, an unspoken reminder of the past and the fractures that remain unresolved. To the public, Camilla may appear to have finally been accepted into the royal fold. But for William, her presence is complicated. She is both his father's wife and a symbol of his mother's deepest pain. In many ways, William's interactions with Camilla are not just about present-day obligations, but also about navigating ghosts from the past. Every shared engagement is layered with history, some of it too heavy to fully set aside. Ultimately, while William and Camilla now work side by side, their relationship continues, Tobe shadowed by mistrust, resentment, and the lingering wounds of a love triangle that once shook the royal family. And as the years go on, it remains uncertain whether those scars will ever completely heal. Was the news able to capture how could such news make headlines? How was it reported? Let's find out. The morning after, by the time the first rays of dawn touched the sky, the scandal had already escaped the golden walls of the palace and swept across the globe like wildfire. Newspapers, television anchors, and online platforms screamed with bold, sensational headlines. Camilla sparks outrage in Catherine's gown. William's fury erupts over royal unity crumbles beneath silent feud. The images told their own cameras had frozen every telling moment. The stiffness in William's jaw, the tight fists resting on the table, the forced smiles stretched across face that barely masked disdain. Most striking of all were the glances darting across the dinner hall, cold, sharp, and cutting, like blades clashing in silence. To the public eye, no press statement disguised the truth that the picture screamed louder than words. Palisades hurried into action, desperately drafting statements that attempted to soften the storm. They spoke of a simple misunderstanding, trying to convince the world that the famous gown Catherine once wore had somehow been chosen by Queen Camilla without malice. But the public wasn't buying it. The gown was too iconic, tweeted to Catherine's image, and the tension glaring under the chandelier lights. It was too obvious to ignore. Inside the private chambers of Kensington, the storm raged hotter. Prince William could not sit still. He moved back and forth across the room like a lion trapped behind bars, his anger barely contained. His voice broke through the stillness, shaking the air with raw emotion. First my mother, now my wife. How much longer must we endure these games? His words were heavy, his face flushed with a fury that had been building for years. Catherine, steady and graceful as always, reached for calm when her husband could not. She looked at him with quiet strength, her tone soft beauty. You defended me, she said gently. But remember, dignity will always echo louder than anger. If they mean to provoke us, let them. The world sees how are, and that truth will speak for us. Her words carried weight. They soothed him for a moment, easing the storm in his chest, though deep down the fire refused to be put out. For William, this scandal wasn't about a piece of fabric draped across Camilla. It was about so much more. The gown was a symbol, a wound reopened. It stirred memories of his late mother. Princess Diana, the pain she bore, the betrayals suffered, the humiliation she was forced to endure beneath the public gaze. Now, to see his wife placed in a position that echoed those same wounds was embarrassing. For William, protecting Catherine was not just duty, it was legacy. It was respect. It was a promise to shield her from the shadows that had once swallowed his mother. The dinner, intended to display a united royal front to the world, had instead done the exact opposite. It had cracked open the fragile facade, exposing divisions that no chandelier or golden cutlery could disguise. In the end, it was not the speeches that were remembered, nor the glittering decor, nor even the carefully stitched toasts. It was the gown, a single garment that had spoken volumes. And its whisper of discord would linger in the palace corridors long after the lights dimmed and the guests departed. A gown had carried more power than words, and its echo promised to haunt the royal family for years to come. So, what do you think about Camilla's outfit at the dinner? Could she really want to hurt William? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.